So welcome everybody. My name is David Hart. I'm the director of the Mitchell Center. It's wonderful to have you here. It's the beginning of the semester, so you probably noticed this is a series of talks that's been going for years now. Every Monday, 3 o'clock, and a few of the ones that are coming up are up here. And if you want to know more about other talks that go all the way through the semester, they're on our website, so Sustainability Talks in the Mitchell Center, and you'll find it. I think there may be a few that are kind of like to be announced, but we just heard back from the Office of the Office of Policy Innovation in the Future in Hannah Pingree's office in Augusta that one of her members of that program will be coming to speak about the Climate Council on the Monday of Earth Week in April. So we're almost done putting the dotting the I's and crossing the T's on the program for the semester. So I'm going to, just for a second, by way of introduction, if I don't screw this up, show you a couple slides that this is really a story for the students here. So a few months ago, folks at EMDC put on an interesting meeting. I don't even know everything that happened there because I was away for a few months on sabbatical, so maybe they're going to roll this into the talk today. But one of the things I want to say is that this is all about sustainability, and of course sustainability is really this intersection of economic, social, and environmental issues, right? And how can we improve human well-being, which often means community and economic development, at the same time as we protect the environment, which is a very important thing everywhere, and certainly in Maine. So here at the Mitchell Center, we try to focus on all three. That's certainly the case at the Eastern Maine Development Corporation, where we're really lucky today to have two folks who I'm going to do a brief introduction of, and then I'm going to use it to tell a story for the students in the audience, but it's going to be quick. So we have Lee Umphrey, who's going to be speaking. He's the president and CEO of EMDC. Way back, in fact, I didn't know all of this when I first met him, worked for the Congressional Research Service at the Library of Congress, where, not surprisingly, if you're working for the Congressional Research Service, you learn about research, and you learn about data and evidence-based policy, and all of those things look like it strongly shaped his work for the rest of his life. He was a staffer for Claiborne Pell, and students should recognize that name if you've ever heard of a Pell Grant. And of course, Senator Pell and Senator Mitchell served together in the U.S. Senate. And in fact, Lee then was also working as a public affairs consultant, supporting Senator Mitchell during the process of the Northern Ireland, when Senator Mitchell chaired the peace process in Northern Ireland. So lots of wonderful connections here. Vicki Rusbult is also here, and one of the people who organized this group and kind of reached out to us, and I'll tell you that story in a second. She's got huge range of experience in project and grants development and management in a wide range of issues from transportation, economic development, community planning, cancer research, primary care research, healthcare, and in her current role at EMDC, she oversees community and regional economic activities and technical assistance. She also has a doctorate of education from the University of New England and a master's in public administration from the University of Maine. She's an accomplished grant writer. Maybe she already was one, but we like to take partial credit because she took Linda Silka's grant writing course a few years back, and I know I learned a lot from Linda. I should have taken that course. But this picture here, particularly of the three pictures, the one in the middle, Spencer Meyer was one of the people who helped do this stuff back in November that you can see here. Where do experts like that come from? Right here. So Spencer did his PhD with us when we had a $20 million grant from the National Science Foundation called the Sustainability Solutions Initiative, which launched the Mitchell Center as it currently operates. He was very interested in planning tools that look at the balance between economic and community development and environmental protection. He even created something with other colleagues and his advisors. It was called the Maine Futures Community Mapper. Write it down, go to the website, it's awesome. And that's one of the things that he brought to the table in this gathering back in November. But one other thing I just wanted to use this as an excuse for, if you didn't tell him, is, so we have, how many people in this room are students right now? Yeah, cool. So, Spencer, even though he looks like a grown-up now, he was a student at one time. And this is one of the papers that emerged from a cohort of students. I know that some of you are in a cohort. This was one of the cohorts we had, and one of the things they did, and to be honest, one of the first times I met with that cohort, I said, you guys, this is going to be a big adventure. When you're done with it, you ought to write a paper. That's one of the papers they wrote together. And I just want to say that at that time, Spencer was probably at Yale University when the paper was complete. He's now at an NGO that's doing really interesting work in this kind of space. Vanessa's at the University of New Hampshire. Karen is at Dartmouth. Michelle's with the U.S. Forest Service in New York City. Bridie is here on our faculty. Stacia is out at Arizona State. And Holly Smith is at the University of Oregon. Not too bad. So all of you, I know you're going to do equally cool, wonderful stuff, but this is where it started, right here. So kind of fun. I'm going to turn it over to, are you going first, Lee? Thank you so much for being here, and please join me in welcoming them.
Well, it's great to see everybody. I'm glad so many students are here. Big part of what Senator Mitchell has always believed in is engaging students. So that's why this center is here. That's why his foundation's working, and so it's great. And you'll get credit for this also as students?
Some of them, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I'd like to recognize a couple of other colleagues here. Will Harper's here. He recently joined EMDC as a planner, and he's going to be part of the presentation with Vicki, and so we're really pleased to have him on board. I also see EMDC board member Dave Milan, who's at the town of Orono and has had a long career in economic development and all the issues impacting municipalities. So he's a resource too. And my other colleague, Josh McIntyre, who's the Director of Lending Services for EMDC, and also the Tom Davis Employee of the Year Award. Sorry, he really is the Employee of the Year, but he didn't think I'd do that, but he deserves it. And our lending program's a big part of what we do at EMDC. And one of the things, I've been there 14 months, and my focus has been how do you integrate all the services we have. And lending is a big part of getting new businesses, sustaining current businesses, and then having it be interrelated with our workforce development and our community development that Vicki and Will are going to be part of. And in many ways, David mentioned my work in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The mission I had was to coincide with the start of the peace talks. Senator Mitchell wanted to have a conference of education and workforce and business leaders and bring everybody together in one room. This is 1996. These folks had never been in the same room together, but working with the University of Ulster, we created a community forum for both East and West Belfast folks and people from the Republic of Ireland. And it was a real contentious endeavor because when you think about the troubles and what was happening there, it was not only economic despair, but people were dying, people were being killed. So it was a real tumultuous time. But Senator Mitchell believed that for the peace talks to be truly successful, the community had to be behind it. And to be behind it, they had to be educated, they had to have jobs, and we had to have integrated services in the community and everybody to work together. So it was a big part of the success that he had there and everything he's done in his career. And what we're trying to do at EMDC is in similar vein. How do you bring people together? Not only internally with all our services, but externally. And working with the folks here at the Mitchell Sustainability Center, it's a big part of that. And it's not just dialogue, but how do you get things done? I mean, too often people just talk, and have meetings and have strategic plans, and they look great. You put them on the shelf, and everybody's proud, but you really need to have some action. And that's what Senator Mitchell was about. And he really wanted deliverables from that conference so that it could reinforce the talk of creating peace. And in a similar vein, that's what we do at EMDC. We try to bring folks together and provide a program of success for people. And this involves everybody at the local, regional, and state level, and the federal level. Edie Smith is here representing Senator King, and he's been a great advocate for this kind of work. And if you listen to what Senator King talks about, and also as a governor, he talks about how do we get all the players together, how do we assess what our skills are, what our strengths are, and how do we use them. And he's all about outcomes, and that's why he's been successful, and Edie's wonderful. And so with all of that, I'll be around afterwards if you have any questions about the organization. And I think, walking in, seeing the picture and the motto from Senator Mitchell really reinforces what he believes and what you folks are doing. So I suggest on the way out, just take a look at that and take stock. And it's really good. And I feel fortunate. I knew Senator Mitchell here in Maine, in Washington, and in Northern Ireland, and he stayed the same the whole time. He was the same guy, and always looking for outcomes. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Vicki.
Thank you, Lee. We have a couple of handouts that we thought we'd pass around that we don't want you to be sitting and reading them while we're speaking, but you might want to take some notes as we go along. So I'll just start it over here and you guys can pass back. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to see such a great turnout. You're talking about the peace accords in Ireland. Maybe think a little bit in the perspective of the peace accords in Penobscot County and in eastern Maine. Among communities, there's often a lot of competition for funding and for investment and partnership. And I think what we've discovered through our model and also work we've done over recent years has led to the conclusion that working together and in partnership, you get better results, longer term results, and it attracts new funding. So we're sticking with that mantra. So, oops. We developed a new model of economic development, which we call the Economic Opportunity Response Team. EMDC began in 1969 as one of 7 designated economic districts for the state of Maine. They're designated by the governor. Everybody can hear me, right? And we started with a traditional roster of services. We had community development, business development, all leading to economic development. We added lending to that package. And in more recent years, we added workforce development in 2009. These are considered a more traditional grouping of services that other districts such as ours provide to the communities and the regions they serve. But in 2019, we decided to build on a study that we did that was funded by the Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration to do an intensive 15-month study looking at our region after the closing in 2014 and 2015 of the major paper mills in rural communities. We lost 5 of the 6 just in our region alone. And as you can imagine, the impact that was huge. We lost close to 1,500 jobs, and they were each a major employer in the region where they were situated. And as a result, those communities experienced devastating losses, not only in property tax going down and other businesses closing who happened to be supply chain to the paper mills, but more significantly, the loss of livable wage jobs was just huge. So we decided in 2019 to launch a more comprehensive model of economic development, which blends the traditional with more unique and new roster services. And as you can see, it blends in well. You'll be able to see that it blends in well with our current and traditional services. So why change? In the study that we did on a regional basis, we came to the conclusion that we need to have a new vision to think about the way we do business. And we lost some of our historical tradition employers and it was one of those hugest assets in our region as far as creating jobs and economic vitality. And when those paper mills went down, a lot of our communities struggled, and the region struggled. Where do we go from here? And the answer to that, is they found in other places across the country, is diversity. You need to not put all your marbles in one bag, so to speak, because if there's additional losses experienced in the future, you're going to just keep continuing to experience that devastation and having to rebuild from scratch. So diversifying your economy leads to more resilience and sustainability, and it builds upon those entrepreneurs and small businesses who might be unique in nature, but they might lead to more opportunities for the region. So the old model was tried and true, and it was post-industry revolution, and it was doing traditional methods of supporting businesses who started up in communities, but that doesn't work anymore. And something that we heard over and over again is that if we're going to change the region and we're looking to diversify the region, we need to think of a new way of doing economic development at the same time. So we've developed a coordinated system that increases investment in the future, not only for communities, but for businesses and for people. And it's also rebuilding that community culture on how do we grow our region and how do we grow our community and what do we need to do as individuals to foster that growth. So what's different? EMDC's economic model promotes an expansion of the opportunities. It's being proactive instead of reactive. And you hear a lot about SWOT analyses. We have a SEDS group that meets throughout the year. That's one of the roles that EMDC serves. It's a comprehensive economic development strategic plan. And that is to sit down with stakeholders, business owners, community leadership, county, state, and federal to talk about what are our weaknesses, what are the challenges are we going to be facing, what are some of those opportunities, whether they're considered weak signals or not really trends yet, but they might be an opportunity, and how do we build on our current strengths. Obviously, the wood industry, although we lost the paper mills, that's still a huge asset for the state of Maine and for our region in particular. So you don't just leave that behind, you look at new ways of reusing that wood fiber. So we have promoted ways to engage public and private investments, and that's looking at partnerships in and out of the state of Maine. We support Maine-based businesses. One of the little taglines that came out of the work that we did, the study that we did, is small is the new big. That if we're going to grow, we should start growing from within rather than continuing to focus all our energies and attract business from away. Let's build on our current assets. And then it's to engage and react to issues that are pertinent to our state and to New England and to the globe as far as things that could impact future economic growth and vitality. Climate resiliency is a good example of this. So this is the diagram, the schema of our new economic model. And as you can see, we first serve community, business, and people. And we have when a community reaches out to us or a business reaches out to us, we engage an economic opportunity response team. And that is very specific to the client, and it's bringing to the table all the services from EMDC that are appropriate to the conversation. It could be lending, it could be investment, it could be workforce development, it could be comprehensive planning. It's a wide range of things that we government contracting. And then we start working on addressing their current needs and what they see as their future needs and building a targeted roadmap that can help lead them through the current travails to get to the point of starting to see some return on their work. This middle long column are all the services. The services in red are new activities at EMDC, while the services below in blue are our traditional services that we've been offering for a while now. And that includes broadband planning, workforce development, lending and investment, the government contracting, the procurement technical assistance center, and support for disadvantaged business owners. And then we also serve as that referral point, that gatekeeper to refer people to other services if we can't respond to the needs that they have. But up above in the red is what's unique. I think it's interesting to note that we recently got a Phase 1 investment grant from MTI, Maine Technology Institute, to do a planning study about economic development districts across the country and to determine if our model is in fact unique like we thought it was, and then also to reach out to some of those communities that have been designated as opportunity zones. And what we found from our assessment of 40 communities across the country in similar regions with similar populations, that we are indeed unique. And although there's one other in Montrose, Colorado, who had a lot of the similar basic services, none of them have expanded to include things like economic gardening and climate resiliency and site selection for business investors and business attraction. And the broad range, the partnership between university and community. The whole package that we're presenting is in fact truly unique. So once we determine all of those things that we can bring to the table, either directly for that community or to the region through a series of emerging opportunity conferences, for example, then we'll get that final roadmap, and then we stay for the long haul. This is a long-term partnership. It's not go in and fix a problem and then walk away. We're there for the long haul. And so we will take that roadmap and help that community or business work through the obstacles and uncover the opportunities and reach the point of success. So what I'd like to do now is turn the podium over to Will Harper, who's going to talk about our newest program that we just added this year on climate resiliency.
You don't need to clap or anything. So I typed out my comments onto a nice sheet of paper, and rather than reading those verbatim, I figured I would expand on a little bit of why I got into the work that I got into and how it's relevant to EMDC. I finished my master's degree in policy planning and management, and I was really interested in planning. And one of the reasons why was because there's such an interesting dialogue about urban planning right now. There are a lot of new cutting-edge ideas, and I think it's really fascinating to see that evolving. But one of the things that I see happening a lot is that rural spaces are really left out of that dialogue, and there's no way to talk about planning for rural spaces. And when we do start talking about planning for rural spaces, a lot of that planning is coupled with growth. And so a lot of the small towns that I talk to hear me saying that when a planner shows up there, they're talking about two things. One, zoning, and two, to talk about growth that they don't have. And in many cases, that's not the case. We are really trying to find sustainability for communities that exist right now and not trying to foist upon them a plan for unmitigated growth. And fortunately, we have a lot of communities that really know where their strengths and their resources are. And one of the things that I'm really hoping to do is to bring about climate resiliency discussions that take advantage of those efforts to adapt and to make the best of what resources we do have, because the reality is that a lot of Maine's rural spaces, we have stable and declining populations. We might not see opportunities to build those new big technological innovations that we see coupled with sustainability. So I'm hoping that makes sense in terms of what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. And I think it's important to note that Will's addition to EMDC has opened the horizons on how we can better serve the communities that we work with. And he brings some tools to the table with GIS mapping, which is critical to support communities in the work that they do. David, I think you can attest to that. And there's not a lot of expertise in the state right now. And so having that resource at EMDC, I think, is really important. But climate resiliency needs to be looked at now hand in hand with economic development. and economic strategies and comprehensive plans forecasting out for the future has to include a component of climate resiliency to be really relatable and realistic. So, moving on. Another one of the components of our new strategy is attention to private investment. And we've talked about our lending department and that Josh McIntyre heads up, but he also heads up our efforts in private investment. And this is relatively new for EMDC. And I think the services that we provide are also unique compared to other EDDs because of our partnership with Dr. Brian Walton, who is a professor at Hudson University and also has a private corporation where he assists communities that have been designated by the governor as opportunity zones. And typically those communities that have that designation were noted and found to be those that are currently economically disadvantaged and that could likely benefit the most by having this additional designation to attract new investment. So what Brian has done has helped to educate our region, either through our conferences or talking one-on-one with communities. There have been instances where Josh and I have gone with Brian to talk to communities, to talk about the full package at EMDC, including Brian's work with opportunity zones. But our approach is a little different. We're working with a community rather than a business, so that we want to have the community geared up and ready to accept new investment into their community. The opportunity zones attracts investment because of the tax break it gives to the investors on former prior capital gains, and depending on how long they stick with the investment. Don't ask me to explain all this because this isn't my area of expertise by any means, but I know enough to get to dangerous territory. But it is an asset to the community to have that leverage of that designation because, they want to have private investors come into the region, not necessarily to run what's being done in the community, but to put the dollars in to help their area, their community grow. So another aspect of our MTI study was to survey those those opportunity designated communities. And through the survey, we had a 43% response rate, all of whom indicated that they needed help navigating the opportunity zone benefit. And the problem with the opportunity zones right now is that it's still evolving and regulation is still being written and it's still changing. And so being able to understand all the nuances and all the requirements through that process is really daunting. And so having someone at the table that can provide that level of expertise, I think, is really crucial for communities to realize the most benefit. So the other thing that Brian can do with our communities is potentially talk to investors from out of the state that are looking for ways to invest in regions that are really going to build the communities. It's a good bang for their investment. Their return on the tax deferment is terrific. Plus, it's that do good, feel good kind of thing and participation that they want to have on their roster. So that is another one of those big things that we're working on. Josh will be working on that pretty much hand in hand with Brian in the future months. Economic gardening is another thing that we started in 2019. We sent 3 staff members, to go get certified at a national organization that has coined economic gardening. And this is not support for startups, new entrepreneurs, just getting into the business. This is for those businesses that are ready and poised to move to the second stage. So they have an annual revenue of 1 to 50 million, and they employ 10 to 100 employees, and they're ready to move to the next stage. But they need to do it smartly. They need to have smart growth. And so bringing in that technical assistance, not only from people trained at EMDC, but with our national partners, to come in and train the higher-ups, the leaders in the businesses, to show them paths to help grow their business in a smart and economically sound way, and do it in a time frame that it's going to be the most advantageous for their business is the way to go. And so right now we are the only organization in the state of Maine that's providing economic gardening, and we hope over the next few months that we can roll this out further. What we're going to do is start with a pilot project that would probably select 4 or 5 businesses and work with them to further refine and define our specific program, and then be able to roll it out on a broader scale. It does require investment by the business, so that's one factor that we're looking for funds right now, but we're hoping that we can get this program built where there'll be more and more people that are going to want to make the investment to get that kind of expertise themselves. So why does economic gardening matter? Really simple. It accelerates jobs at an increased rate. And they have a lot of evidence that shows those businesses that went through the economic gardening process realized a larger growth in employees than those that went on their own, and they did it over a quicker period of time. And it was a cost-effective approach to smart growth. They don't want to make this prolonged and carry it out over a couple of years when they want to realize that growth potential now. And it also ties that business closer to the community where it's based. And what they've seen through the national program is that this sense of loyalty is developed with the communities where the business is based, and you see more investment and participation in programs and projects within that community by going through this actual training and showing the benefits to the business by doing that. So again, you're going to see that roll out more over the next few months. And then this is the one that I like to talk about, and when I was here going for a second master's and decided I didn't want to do international work, I wanted to stay in the state of Maine, I switched to complete my doctorate. But while I was here, I took a course with Linda Silka called University Community Partnerships. And it was real eye-opening. And now that I work in the communities to the degree that Will and I do, we see firsthand the benefit of having those impartial parties come in and help facilitate meetings and get warring factions within a community to come together and talk collaboratively rather than fight. So it promotes a commitment to open communication. I'm probably repeating everything you say in your class all the time, Linda. They do a lot of, you can do what if scenarios. You can say, if we go this direction, what's going to be the outcome? What will be the impacts to us, the community, the business? You can get a shared understanding and expectation from all the stakeholders on what is our goal, and if we go this path to reach that goal, do we all understand the steps and what the benefits are going to be? And then I think what's important in this is that workforce and education is engaged at all levels. And so we work with our workforce development team that's based within EMDC, but we also work with adult education, we work with community colleges, we work with technical colleges like Bates, we work with University of Maine, Hudson University, and so we have a lot of partnerships that feed into these community university collaborations. One of the first ones I want to roll out this year, Linda and I talked briefly about this, is with the City of Eastport. We recently performed a business feasibility study for the City of Eastport to show what your strengths are, what you should build on, what you should do to get more people to come to your region, whether it's tourists or business. And now it's to the phase where we want to roll it out to the community and get more people in the community engaged. And so we're going to implement this community-university partnership right off the bat to bring the parties together to have a really good, solid conversation. The other parts of this particular service will include that interdisciplinary research to fill in information gaps. Sometimes you as students have access to more in-depth information than a community or a business or EMDC can have. Maybe not with Will now, but I think having that partnership to really investigate and navigate all of the data that's out there and come to sound conclusions that's backed by the data. So I think this is something that we're going to be rolling out more this year, again, like I said, with Eastport, but it has the potential to get communities working well together. And something we talked about, the paper mill communities, I think it's going to be very advantageous when you have some communities. The Katahdin region is notorious for the communities not playing well in the sandbox together. And we've actually seen over the last few months that they've decided that's not the way to go now. We're in a crisis mode. And so working together and collaboratively with a shared vision and mission is going to serve us better than continuing to fight and compete for the same pots of money. So I think this is going to continue to grow as we move on. The Emerging Opportunity Conference Series is actually one piece of a broad educational platform that EMDC provides. We look for ways to bring people together and to facilitate conversations. So there's three pictures up here that are great examples of that. The one in the middle is recently Governor Mills was brought to EMDC by Lee to come and talk to our stakeholders and most importantly our communities, to hear about their concerns, barriers, opportunities, what's happening at the state in Augusta. And it was a great conversation with all parties, of everybody listening and contributing. This is our conference back in November that David talked about earlier. And that's the first in the series of the Emerging Opportunity Conferences. And some of our conferences, it sounds like we might have a little bit of an overlap in the future, housing, but we're going to look at healthcare, climate resiliency, and a lot of other topics, the STEMs, just to kind of broaden the experience, knowledge of the people in our region. And maybe they might decipher ways that maybe we could do this in our community and it help our community grow. On the far end of the slide is a picture of our grants conference in Dover Foxcroft. We offer a grants conference out in our communities. We've done 5 so far over the last 4 years, and we have attendance ranging from 35 to 80. So we have a good attendance at this, just to learn the basics about how to write grants, probably a lot of what Linda does in her grants training. We also bring some federal and state funders to the table so they can give their perspective of what they're looking at and what they want to see in grant opportunities. And finally, one of the pieces that we brought together in 2018 was a collaboration with Penobscot County and people up in the Katahdin region to develop the Katahdin Region Development Board. Penobscot County made a gracious investment of 7 years that led to the hiring of Mike Elliott, who is the executive director of the Katahdin Region Development Board. And his time he's an EMDC employee, but his time is spent solely in the Katahdin region to help businesses in the communities recognize and build economic opportunities and economic development and work on some of those community issues that are also maybe impacting, like housing and broadband services and things of that nature. So by him being embedded in Eastern Maine Development Corporation, it also partners him with all the other services that we also provide. So he can pull in the workforce development folks to work on workforce training. We can look at business relocation, expansion, second stage growing, identify pockets of money for funding, and then provide technical assistance, but also refer to a network of partners. Sometimes having other partners at the table that may not have anything to do with your region, but they've done similar work, can be very eye-opening. So we want to foster those relationships and those partnerships. And finally, this is just a picture of our esteemed leader, who is recently accepting a NATO Impact Award in 2019 for our new economic model. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I have a few handouts of our annual report from last year if you'd like to take a copy of that. And we're always open to questions or comments or observations or whatever. Feel free to give us a call.
Great, thanks, Vicki.
So are there questions?
Plenty of time for questions. Can I I get things started by asking, so as you've moved into this new approach, lots of different regions, and I think Maine might not be any different, but sort of don't always adjust to changes in things rapidly. What are you seeing either as kind of early opportunities where kind of communities are saying this is going to work better for us, or alternatively, things where you're kind of seeing they're not really used to this kind of approach, we're going to have to work on this?
I think there's two sets that I've seen. The former mill communities are eager to find ways to rebuild what they had. And it may not look the same, it's not going to be paper mills, but it's using the wood assets, and the University of Maine has a lot of work going on ways to reuse that wood fiber for insulation, for blades of the windmills, for a whole variety of different things, the composite factor. But they are very open in most cases. Let's talk, let's throw out ideas. They might seem like bizarre, off left field ideas, but they're willing to have those conversations. The towns that are more resistant that I see are smaller communities that don't have a major employer in their borders, that are a preponderance of older citizens who say this was great when I was growing up and I like it the way it is and I don't want it to change. And I mean, I've heard in conversations things like, I don't want to increase business because I like being able to cross the street and not have traffic. I get it. For an older individual, that may be important, but if you want your community to survive and if you want your youth to stay, there has to be opportunity. I think you're seeing a slow shift in a lot of communities that are coming to that realization. There's also a lot of communities that all touch on the same things. So the same ideas keep circulating. And one of those is bedroom community. We're going to be a bedroom community and people can live here and travel to Bangor to work or to Orono to work. Or we're going to increase broadband and they can live here and work out of their homes. Every town that I've talked to in the last 3 years has said that as one of their economic opportunities. So somebody's got to give. It's not going to work everywhere. And I think there's been a lot of dialogue around broadband that it's going to cost a significant amount of money to get a lot of these really remote rural areas linked in where they're going to be able to have that level of consistent broadband connectivity to be able to work from home. So, I think you get two levels. Lee.
I just want to make one other point. Stay right here, Vicki. Just one other difference is that EMDC is embedded in the community. So there may be resistance at different places, but we're a known quantity, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but we are from the community, and I think that makes a big difference. What happens when you see mills closing or opioid crisis happening, you either get people from the State House or Augusta in general, or out of state, kind of come to communities with solutions to help. And so I think one of the value-added things we bring is that we're from the community and we're trusted and we actually run programs. And I think one of the dangers in changes that happens statewide is that sometimes the flavor of the month isn't the best flavor to have, but it seems good. And somebody from Augusta might come into a town and think they've got all the solutions. But I think being a community-based group is the difference. And I think, too, when communities resist change, they're more apt to speak up because they know us. And I think that's a real value to what we're doing.
And I do think, touching back on the university partnership for facilitation of some of these community meetings, I think it's invaluable having someone who doesn't have any skin in the game. We're just relating the facts and the data that we've found. And so if you're not biased because you live on the north side of town compared to those that live on the south side of town who want a firehouse and the other ones don't, or they have different priorities, having that impartial voice at the table is really beneficial. But the other thing I think that EMDC has been doing well, particularly since Lee came on board, it's all about communication, is that we sit and listen. We don't go in and say, you've got to do it this way or the highway. This is our solution, and if you don't like it, tough, we'll leave. You don't like our way, we're leaving. We listen to the problems, we listen to your ideas. We might give you information that says this may not work as well as you might hope it would, but have you thought about this? So, I mean, we go in there as an active partner, and we're there to listen, and we're there to roll up our sleeves and help do the planning.
Mitchell Way.
The Mitchell way.
Other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the geographic region that you guys actually work?
Well, depending on the service, we have different regions. For workforce development, we serve Washington County, Hancock, Piscataquis, and Penobscot. For our economic development, general services, and some of these new services, we serve Hancock, Piscataquis, Penobscot, and Waldo, a large portion of Waldo County. And then programs like Josh's, lending, that's statewide. And government contracting, there's only one PTAC, government contracting service in the state of Maine, and that's based at EMDC. Yes, sir.
How much do you focus on creating new businesses, going from an idea to a business, and what do you see as the biggest obstacles for people to go from an idea to a business?
You know, when we started building our new model, we didn't want to try to replace what's already out there. And there are a lot of organizations that are already out there that help those and support those entrepreneurs and new business startups, including the University of Maine. And so we don't want to duplicate that or say, don't go to them, come to us. So we can be supportive and join in dialogues, but we're not the go-to. If someone comes to us as a new startup business, we'll likely refer them out to somebody else who can better serve their needs. But still, we can stay in the dialogue if they wish that. But where we want to focus on is attracting business from away, but also supporting second stage business growth. That's where we think we can make a difference because nobody else is doing that. So, yes, sir.
I'd be curious to hear about any significant success stories that y'all have had where y'all were actually able to successfully facilitate a partnership that ended up blossoming a little more than it had the potential to.
Sure. I think probably one of the most visible ones was with the town of Lincoln. Josh and Brian Walton and I went and met with the new economic director. What was that, Josh, about a year and a half, 2 years ago? Yeah. They were one of those communities that lost their active paper mill and lost a couple, 300 jobs, good paying jobs. And so they were one of the earlier ones, along with Millinocket, on the bandwagon of how do we reinvent ourselves. The state is and the federal government is very interested in those communities reusing those former paper mill sites because a lot of them already have infrastructure in place and they don't want to lose that infrastructure from years of being idle. And so the town of Lincoln actually created Lincoln Lakes Innovation Corporation that works in partnership with the town of Lincoln. They created the first opportunity zone nationally. I'm a part of the board, but EMDC and Josh and Lee and others of us workforce development have been participants in dialogues from the get-go. And so recently they had a press conference late summer, early fall, announcing the partnership with Ligniterra Global, which is the CLT company. And they have conversations going on right now with other companies that do like kind of work, that build.
Tell people what CLT is.
Cross-laminated timber. It's where you treat the timber and then you layer it and use this special glue that they would also produce at the mill site. And you can do several stories of a building and it replaces concrete and it's fire retardant. And Josh, do you have anything more to offer on that?
Yeah, basically, Vicki mostly described it as essentially taking 2x4s and 2x6s, laying them parallel to each other, and then putting a perpendicular layer over those, and continuing that process in different widths. And then you can build mostly it's a replacement of concrete and steel in mid-rise buildings, so you can do skyscrapers from like 6 to 13 or 15 stories easily, or it becomes very cost competitive with concrete and steel. But because it's wood fiber and sequestering carbon, replacing carbon that would be used in concrete and steel, and concrete in particular, is very Europe for a few decades, and it's just starting to get more attention in the United States.
And one of the early things we were also able to help the town of Lincoln with is we gave them about $150,000 in brownfields assessment dollars to go in and do those assessments of the ground to look for contaminants, whether it's petroleum-based or hazardous materials, to figure out what they needed to do to clean up the area so they could bring in new business.
Can I just add, if you don't mind? You can see great examples of CLT over at the Composites Lab. Here, the Composites Lab that you made under the direction of Vicki Dagler has been working on CLT for quite a few years. They've been the pioneers in CLT, in my opinion. And so head over to the lab if you want to actually feel it. It's over there.
I think the good thing, the smart thing about the town of Lincoln is that they brought all the players together early on. And they talked about redeveloping the site and what do we need to do and what do we need to do first. And can we just do a portion of the mill site first and then work on developing the rest of it. And so I think that strategy has served them well. And we've been at the table for all of those conversations. So we've had workforce and government contract and everybody involved in those conversations. Yes?
Is there any concern or attention being brought to the decline of the logging industry at all? Is that tied to the paper mills, and is that an extension of something that you guys have worked with, or is that something else?
Being the naive individual about wood industry that I was, when the mills went down and I heard a couple of them talking about building sawmills, I thought, what the heck for? But as I said earlier, the wood industry is not going anywhere. That's still one of the hugest assets that Maine has. It's just looking for ways to use it that were different from the past. And so, it's maybe not the traditional logging on the end market, but it will still involve logging because you got to get the wood, to get it to the sawmills, to get it to the point where it can be put in for reuse, and whether it's going to be insulation. I mean, there's just a whole range of things they're talking about. That wood product can be food, animal food. There's just a wide range of products that it can be flipped to. So, yes, ma'am.
Does your work expand at all to like the islands in Knoxville?
I think anything that's considered in our territory, and actually that's the state as a whole, will help. But there are organizations that we don't want to step on their toes. We don't want to replace what they're already doing. The Island Institute, for example, does fabulous work. And they don't need us to go in and say, they're not doing a good job, use us. The fact of the matter, they are doing a good job. So what we try to do is collaborate when we can and offer our services if they need them. So we want to be true partners and help any way we can for these organizations. So you'll see us partnering with other economic development districts too on projects. So
One small comment about the Island Institute is, if you're interested in knowing more about that, there was a talk given here in the fall by Stephanie McLagan-Trump, the Island Institute. It's available on our website. You can listen to it. I was traveling, so I listened. It's a fantastic talk. Yeah, she also did her master's here.
Yes,
do you know why Washington County is not included in borders?
yeah, I do. Several years ago, they were part of EMDC's territory, as was Knox County. And then about 7 years ago, they rezoned the district, the economic development districts, and those two counties flipped into northern development. And then we retained the 4 counties that we serve. But as far as square mileage, we're the largest economic development district in the state of Maine. And unlike the other economic development districts, we can provide a range of services that are available statewide that the other ones don't necessarily provide. Yes, what?
One of the things I would add to that is, for example, Vicki mentioned that depending on the service, our service area is slightly different. And Washington County Council of Government is actually a fairly high functioning. Comstock Valley Council of Government is no longer intact. Hancock County Planning Commission is no longer intact, and so we're trying to take up some of that slack. But we also work with some communities, for example, in Rusbult County, who are closer to us than they would be to northern Maine development. And I think especially for the planning services, Washington County, since they have a council of governments there, that means that they're fairly self-sufficient in that respect. That doesn't mean that if a community approached us that we wouldn't work with them in some capacity.
You know, and something else I didn't mention that Lee has been pounding in us as employees for the last year and a half is that we need to do what we do well. And we need to think about compliance with federal and state regulations. We need to follow policies and procedures. And we need to do what we do and do it well. And we can't be adding new services if we're falling short on other services that we provide, those traditional services. So we've been very reflective the last year and a half and looking at ways that we can improve what we do. So the comprehensive planning is a good example. We've revamped that entirely to make it a little bit of an easier process for the communities to use and help us as we put together the comp plans from our end as well. So Josh has been doing major overhaul in the lending department. So
I'm looking at the time, we're just about wrapped up, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are people here who'd like to ask some more questions. If you do, please come on up. Maybe you guys can hang around just a little bit.
Sure.
And let's please join me in thanking them for a great presentation.
thank you for the opportunity.